back to Oral Communication in Context. For our 10th lesson, we will be talking about the different principles of speech writing. Today's lesson is divided into 3 parts. The first one will be about the different parts of a speech. The second one will discuss about the speech writing process. And the third one would talk about the different guidelines in speech writing. Let us first begin our discussion with identifying the different parts of a speech. So, a speech is typically divided into 3 major parts. Just like how you structure an essay, it's similar to how you structure a speech as well. So you have your introduction, the first part. The second part would include your body or your discussion. And the last part would have to be your conclusion. Let us discuss these 3 major parts one at a time. Let's talk about introduction first. Introduction is the part of the speech wherein you introduce the theme of your speech. So basically, what is going to be the main concept, main idea of your entire speech. During the beginning of your speech or the very first part of your speech, you have to indicate the reason why you write or why you wrote that speech in the first place. So is it to inform, to give information about a particular topic, or is it to argue about a certain condition, about a certain statement, or about a certain issue, or maybe you just want to entertain the crowd. So the first part or the introduction of your speech should always implicitly or explicitly state the purpose or the reason for writing that speech in the first place or delivering that speech in the first place. Just like how essay introductions are structured, a speech introduction should also be able to catch the attention of the audience or the listener. Because of this, similarly, you could make use of what we refer to as hook statements, wherein these are statements that could catch the attention of your listeners or your audience, or just keep them interested to listen more about your discussion or about your speech. There are different kinds of hook that we could use. For example, you could start your speech by asking a question, throwing a question to your audience, or probably quoting someone else, or using quotations that you believe are relevant to the entire theme or the idea, the concept of your entire speech. Another hook strategy that you can utilize is telling a story. So narrating something, it could be a personal experience, an anecdote, or an experience of someone else that you know, that you are familiar with, okay? Or it could actually also be an excerpt to a published story or someone else's story. What does this do? This is particularly helpful, especially if your main intention or main purpose or goal in delivering and writing the speech in the first place is to motivate or to influence your readers or even to entertain your listeners or your audience. Informative speeches, on the other hand, would usually utilize facts and statistics in order to catch the interest of their audience. The second part is what we refer to as the body, or basically the part of your speech that will contain your discussion. So it could be the discussion of your chosen topic or chosen concept, chosen idea, or it could be a discussion of your arguments. Okay, so every detail that you want to present would have to be discussed in this particular part of your speech. The body of your speech would always contain the main topics or your main arguments. So this is where you present all of the key concepts, key ideas, the most important ones. You have to highlight them here. Now, aside from those important ideas or key main topics or key concepts, you have to make sure that those concepts or ideas are supported by details or other ideas. Okay, now in order for you to do this effectively, you need to make sure that once you support those pieces of information, the ideas that you use must be presented in a logical and sequential manner. So there is a good reason as to why you presented it in such a manner or in such a way. Typically, what others would do, especially if you are, for example, you don't have a lot of time to present your speech or to present all the concepts in your speech, you are limited by time, or your speech in itself, the delivery of your speech in itself is time bound, then what you could do is start from the most important concepts first, the main arguments that you have, the arguments that you believe will best support your claim. Okay, so start from that, from the most important down to the least important. That's what you could do. But if you are not pressed for time, you can start with the least important, going to the most important argument or claim or idea that you have. Okay, so that's That's what we say when we refer to presenting ideas in a logical manner and sequential manner. So there's a specific order to your presentation of the concepts or supporting details. Now, aside from all of those supporting details, of course, obviously, you need to make sure that it's strong enough for you to sound credible, for your speech to look credible as well, okay? Especially if your intention is to inform the public, okay? So what can you do? Other supporting details such as figures and other data may also be included. These will serve actually as your evidence that will support any claim that you make regarding the issue or the concept or the topic. Last but not the least, of course, you have the conclusion. The conclusion is basically the ending to your speech, the ending to your written speech, okay? So what does the conclusion include? More often than not, the conclusion is described as simply a restatement of all of your main arguments or your thesis statement. Okay, so it's a restatement, meaning it has been stated before. You are simply repeating it. Basically, it's just described as a summary statement or review of what has been previously discussed. Therefore, since it's simply a restatement or review, no new information must be presented in the conclusion. You cannot include new pieces of information in your conclusion. Always go back to the main points, main arguments, starting from the introduction up to the body. So what can you do? You can restate your thesis statement or your main big idea and then try to go back and summarize all of the important ideas or evidences, claims that you have presented in your body. Now, aside from that, since it's already the ending, we don't want to make it boring for our listeners or to our audience. So what can you do? You have to make sure that even your conclusion is something memorable. It's gonna be remarkable. So what does it mean? It has to include something that will make your audience remember your speech. Just like in introduction, remember, we can utilize hook statements to catch the attention of our readers. So in the conclusion, you could go back to that hook statement. If, for example, if you threw a question in the audience, do not answer it right away. Make sure that the answer will be at the very end of your speech. Okay, so take for example, would you believe me if I have told you blah 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 blah? So that represents your main argument, and then you will support it all throughout your body or your discussion. And then at the end, pose the same question again. Now that we have understood this, blah, 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 and now I have presented this to you, blah, 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 and so on and so forth, what do you now think about it? So it leaves them something to think about. Even after listening to your speech, it's as if you post an assignment to them, a homework to them, that there's something that they could think about, okay? Would they agree with you? Would they disagree with you? Would they just accept what you have discussed? Or would it force them to research more about the topic or the concept that you have presented, okay? Similarly, you could also use call to action statements. So give them something to do. After listening to your speech, what should happen? What do you think should your audience do? Give them a task that they could do. So take for example, if your speech is all about your relationship with your parents, for example, and in the hook statement, you ask the question, when was the last time you talked to your mom and your dad? Okay, and then at the end, you answer that one based on your own experience. At your conclusion, you answer that one based on your own experience, and then after that, you threw the same question, okay, and tell your audience, instruct your audience, now it's the time for you to talk to your mom and dad and so on and so forth. That's just a very simple example of a call to action statement. Let us now proceed to the speech writing process. As speech writing is also an academic endeavor, it is not an easy task. It will require certain qualities, certain skills before you could even produce a good written speech. So what can we do? The first thing that you have to always remember, especially when your intention is to deliver it to an audience, to have a lot of people listening to it, okay, what you have to first do is to conduct an audience analysis. What do we mean by this? You have to understand who your audience is going to be. What are they like? What are their personalities? Even their economic, socio-economic backgrounds will affect the way that they listen to you, the way that they will digest or process the information that they will receive from you. Similarly, it also helps establish the relationship that you are going to be having with your audience, because in conducting an audience analysis, you are getting to know them better. And because you are getting to know them better, it's easy for you to determine what approach to use. How are you going to approach them? How are you going to deliver the speech so that they will be more interested in listening to it? Okay, so that is the reason why it's very important to get to know the audience beforehand. The second thing that you have to do on the first part of the speech writing process is to be clear and specific about the purpose of your speech. Now, we have already talked about the different kinds of speeches according to purpose. So, is it to inform? Are you going to be describing a concept, an idea? Are you going to be defining an idea, a word, or even a phenomena, all right? Or maybe you are going to instruct them on how to do something. Or maybe you just want to present your argument, your side to an issue. Now, you also may want just to simply influence them, motivate them to do something, okay, or to be something. Or maybe you just want to make them laugh, make them feel at ease, or simply to entertain them. So you have to be clear regarding that goal, that objective, that purpose. After you have already identified and realized the purpose of your speech, it's now time for you to select a topic, okay? What you can do is that, for example, if you are not given a specific topic, or you were given just a broad topic to discuss, for example, someone just asked you, can you just talk about education? That in itself is already a topic. However, that is too vague. That subject is too broad. There are many different aspects to education. For example, is it distance education? Is it face-to-face education? Is it elementary education, primary education, tertiary education, and so on and so forth? There are many branches to it. What you can do is after after you have been given, or after you have already selected a general topic, try to narrow it down. What specific topic about that general idea do you want to talk about? Okay? In narrowing down a topic, it is very important for you to ensure that this particular specific topic that you have chosen could be research. It could be something that other authors, other speakers, other sources could supplement with information. This makes it an academic endeavor. Now, in narrowing down a topic as well, it is best that you choose a topic that you know a lot, okay? Or it's a topic that you know a lot of, alright? You know a lot of things about this particular topic, because it makes it easier for you to talk about it in the future. It makes it easier for you to expound on the information. After you have chosen a topic and you have already specified the topic that you want to discuss, the next thing that you could do during the first part of the speech writing process is to gather information about it. It's researching. Research what other authors, what other speakers have talked about. Research about what they have discussed about this particular topic. So it's time for you to gather information regarding your chosen topic. In the next part, or in the second phase of the speech writing process, after your research, you now need to select a speech pattern. How are you going to deliver this speech? Is it going to be, are you just going to be simply reading from it, or are you going to be memorizing it? Alright, so there are many different speech patterns that you could refer to, and the kind of speech that you plan to deliver will also help you determine the speech pattern that you are going to be using. Next is, after you have already determined the kind of speech that you are going to deliver, you have to now start writing or preparing an outline. An outline is very essential. Even in in essay writing, we utilize an outline because an outline helps you see the entirety of the speech itself, of your own write-up, okay? And it's written, it's presented in such a way that you could already see which are the main concepts, main ideas, and which are the supporting ideas. When you do that, okay, you have the opportunity to really think about, will this support my topic, or is this really supporting my topic, and so on and so forth. So you have an opportunity to organize it in a way wherein the concepts, the ideas flow smoothly, all right? So the transitions are smoother. After you have finalized your outline, of course, it's now time for you to write your speech. Now, it is usually, or it is often suggested that don't start first with your introduction, because your introduction is something that should be catchy. Start first by creating the body of your speech, okay? Why is it suggested this way? It is suggested because more often than not, since we really want to catch our audience's attention, we spend too much time thinking, preparing our introduction. So it consumes a lot of time on the end of the speaker, on the end of the writer. So instead of you spending too much time on the introduction, trying to figure out how you're gonna make it more interesting for them, or how you're going to hook your audience, write first the body of your speech. Because the body is the part wherein you simply present all the information that you have gathered. So your task now is to just insert all of the ideas, all of the evidence, all of the information that would eventually support the claim, the main argument, or the main idea, main concept that you are going to be included in your introduction, okay? So it's easy for us to gather the information and craft that information first in a summary or in an essay format, all right? So after doing so, after you have already crafted or written the body of your speech, now it's time for you to prepare your introduction. Make sure that your introduction would be aligned to the discussion that you have just written, okay? Similarly, after that, make sure as well that the conclusion is aligned with the body and also with your introduction. That's why the conclusion is the very last part that you could prepare. Obviously, once you are done crafting or writing the body of your speech, the introduction and the conclusion, you now have a full-on speech. Your task now is to ensure that the information that you have presented, the way that you have written the speech itself, it's accurate and precise. Now, how do we do that? You could either edit or revise. So in editing or revising, you are figuring out where else or what other parts can you improve on. It could be in the structure of your essay. It could be in the structure of your sentences. It could be on the grammatical errors, okay, correcting grammatical errors, or even inserting punctuation marks, okay, making sure that capitalization and spelling were correct. That is the reason why as well that it is best after you have written it, it is best that you ask someone to read it, okay, before you even deliver your speech. Ask someone else to read the speech that you have written. And this will provide an outsider's perspective, an outsider's assessment of your speech or your write-up. After you have already edited it or revised your speech, it's now time for you, of course, to rehearse the speech that you have written. Okay, so you could either start by reading through it again and again and again until maybe you are more familiar with it and eventually be able to memorize the speech if the communicative situation calls for it. And then, of course, the same process will repeat again and again and again after you have completed the speech, or in case that you are asked to write another or deliver another speech. Now, what are some of the things that we have to consider when we are writing a speech? First and foremost, in choosing a topic, again, like what I have mentioned earlier, narrow down the topic and make sure that the topic that you have chosen is something that will be of interest to your audience and something that you know it's either they could learn from or something that they already know of. Aside from that, in choosing a topic, you also have to know the demands of the occasion and the time allotted for the speech. So what do we mean by demands of the occasion? By demands of the occasion, sometimes there are different communicative situations present during an event. Okay, so you have to make sure that you fully realize what is being asked of you. Why did they even ask you to deliver that speech in the first place? So again, it's going back to the purpose of the speech. Okay, what do you want to happen after? Similarly, there are also instances wherein you might be asked to deliver multiple speeches, or you need to be repeating that same speech over and over again to different groups of people. So different occasions call for different things. Aside from that, there are also sometimes issues with time. There are events, there are occasions that would only require you to talk for a specific amount of time. You are limited, you are bounded by time. So you have to make sure that you consider this in choosing a topic for your speech. Again, it is very, very important to consider your audience. This has to be the very first thing that you have to do. Whether you are writing, you are just simply writing your speech, or you are delivering the speech already. In considering your audience, you need to ensure that the topic you are going to be presenting to them is not too common. Maybe it's something that they already know about or they are familiar about, okay? Or it's something that is already known to them. If they are very familiar already, or it is something that they are very knowledgeable about, it will not be interesting for them anymore. So it is best to make sure that you can contribute to their learning, contribute to their understanding of this particular concept, of this particular idea. Similarly, it has to be purposeful for them as well. It has to be something that is beneficial for them. Why do they need to even listen to you in the first place if they believe that this is not the topic that you are talking about, will not help them eventually, will not be contributing to what they already know, okay, or to what they know. So you have to ensure that it's very relevant to your audience. And once again, the speech must always meet its purpose. So take for example, if your purpose is to inform, but the way that you have written, the way that you have delivered, the way that you have presented your speech was simply to entertain your audience, then definitely there's a mismatch, okay? So make sure that you know your purpose and you stick to that purpose. Aside from the audience, you have to consider the occasion too. When is it gonna be? What's the date? What's the time of your speech delivery? Okay. How many people will be in attendance? Is it gonna be a big audience or a small audience? Okay. What kind of program will they have? Is it a formal event or is it just a casual event wherein people just simply gather? Another thing is, of course, the venue. The size of the venue would often affect the number of attendees. So for example, if it's a large venue, a lot of people are expected to attend that event or occasion. If it's a small venue, then obviously it's only gonna fit few people. So knowing the occasion, knowing the date, the time, the attendance, the type of program, venue would also again help you determine the approach that you are gonna be using when you deliver the speech already. So in determining the speech purpose, you have to remember that a successful speech must have a clear and definite purpose. The purpose must also fit your audience's interest and need. Again, we have already talked about this from a while back. In gathering the material, on the other hand, resources are plentiful. There are many places wherein you can look for extra or supplementary material. There is the library where you could look and search for books. You could access books that have a lot of information right on your hands. Okay, right now it's very common for us to go through the internet. Okay, scour the internet, scour web pages, okay? But make sure that when you use the internet, you only use credible sources. What do we mean by credible sources? These are web pages that are associated with large organizations or popular known organizations and credible organizations, or even, for example, you could refer to journals, you could refer to digital journals at that, or you could refer to other digital files or references. Other people could also be a great source of material for your speech. Like what I have mentioned earlier, you could use other people's experiences, just like how priests deliver their homilies. They would notice that sometimes the experiences or the anecdotes that were given by priests during their homilies speak of experiences of other people. So similarly, when you want to deliver a speech, especially if it's motivational or persuasive or maybe even entertaining, then you could use anecdotes from other people. But make sure that their privacy are protected. So what do we mean by that? You do not have to name specific people or the specific resource person that you got it from, okay? Unless, of course, it's gonna help establish the credibility of the information that you are presenting. For example, you are just simply telling a story about an experience of a friend. You don't always have to name the friend. It's also a way of keeping their privacy intact. However, if it's something that is an informative kind of information, you know that this information, many people will benefit from it. According to blank, 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 then this is blah, 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 blah. So in that way, you are establishing the credibility of what you are saying. In academic writing, we usually refer to that as hedging. You yourself could also be a resource person. Again, your experiences, what you know, your beliefs could also be material for your speech. In outlining your speech, on the other hand, as I have mentioned earlier, outlines will always make your writing easier, okay? Whatever kind of write-up that is, be it a speech, be it an academic essay, and so on and so forth, outlines will always help you. Outlines are very essential because it helps the speaker arrange his or her ideas logically. There's an order to it. There's a specific order, specific sequence that you could follow. And as I have mentioned earlier, it helps in ensuring unity and coherence in his or her materials. It pieces down all the information together. It binds all the information together and ensures that one idea is relevant related to another, and so on and so forth. Now, Atienza in 1997 created guidelines on making an outline. According to him, outlines should contain between 2 to 5 main heads, so main ideas. It should also cover the subject of the speech adequately in relation to its purpose. So everything that you know would help your claim, okay, help support your claim, then you could include that as your main concept and support it with details. In choosing an organizational pattern, we have 3 major ones. There's a time order pattern, or what we refer to as a chronological pattern, wherein you present the information based on the time wherein they happen. So which should go first, which should go next, which should go third, and so on and so forth. More often than not, topics of historical nature make use of this pattern. So it depends on the time wherein it happened. Next is what we refer to as the spatial pattern. In spatial organization pattern, we organize topics according to the physical structure of the subject, or how the topic actually appears in space. This pattern is very useful, especially if you want to describe things or experiences. You could describe them as you see it, okay? That's a spatial pattern. Probably the most common organization pattern, especially in speech writing, okay, is the topical pattern, wherein the speakers take their main topic and decide what are the most important subtopics they would like to talk about. So again, you organize your information based on the topics that you want to talk about. In writing your speech's introduction, you could use a real-life experience and connect that experience to your subject or to your topic. If you do not have a related life experience, what you could do is use practical examples, things that have already happened to other people or you have observed happen, okay, and explain the connection to your subject. You could also start with a familiar or strong quotation or quote and then explain what it means, or explain the relationship it shares, it has with your speech. Again, as I have mentioned, use facts or statistics and highlight their importance to your subject. You could also tell a personal story to illustrate your point. In writing your speech's body, it should contain the bulk of the information and should be clearly organized. In making points or ideas clear, use transition words. These are very essential. What are transition words? These are conjunctions that we could use. For example, however, nevertheless, after, and so on and so forth. There are many transition words and even transition phrases that you could use. Why is it important? Because transition words actually are showing logical relationship of ideas. Okay? So it shows the relationship between one idea to another. In writing your speech's conclusion, on the other hand, conclusion should always be brief and always should be ended with a high note. It should also leave the audience something to think about, making the words linger in their minds for long. It stays with them. You have to make it memorable for them. What you can do in your speech's conclusion is that you could always refer back to your introduction, or you may pose a challenge to your audience. This is what I was saying a while ago. When you are using call to action, conclusion should not be longer than necessary. A one-paragraph conclusion, that's already enough. 5 to 7 sentences, that's already enough for your conclusion. Here are my sources and references for this discussion. Thank you for